Good morning, this is Joan McSween and I'm speaking to you today from the Winter Garden Library. It is Thursday, January the 24th, 2013. Sir, would you state your name?
My name is Hollis Holden.
Good morning, Mr. Holden.
Good morning.
May I ask you, sir, how it is that you came to be in Winter Garden?
Well, I was born in 1942 on top of what is now the R.C. Stevens building. My mother ran a boarding house. She had 3 children, and I broke the back, so we had to move. We moved 50 yards across the tracks to 58 North Boyd Street, and then when I was 8 years old, we moved to 203 North Boyd Street. So all of my 19 years here before I left for the Navy was spent within about 100 yards of the fountain on Plant Street. I left for the Navy. I spent 31 years in the Navy submarine force. We sailed our sailboat to the Caribbean in 1993 after I retired. In late 92. In early 93, my wife developed a dental problem in the Virgin Islands, and we had to come back to some place to get treatment for it. And the logical place was come back to my home, and I still owned the house that my mother had left me and that I grew up in. She had passed away in 1980, and throughout the 80s, my submarine duties required me to be away a lot, so we didn't get back to Winter Garden. So we came back here in February of '93, and I found that my home had been not very well taken care of, and I was embarrassed, and I know my mother was turning over in her grave. And I also, during that period that my wife was getting treatment, became interested in the Main Street program that was in a fledgling state, struggling, and I was very disappointed at the condition of things downtown, the like of people in the streets and shopping, and was particularly devastated to see the condition of the Edgewater Hotel. I used to fly my kites over that hotel, and so I started becoming interested in the city of my youth. My mother used to drive downtown in the 50s, park the car on a Saturday afternoon and then go back home 25 yards from where we parked it so that we could come up on Saturday nights and watch the people and shop in the stores and trade stories. The streets were packed. Now, by 1993, none of that existed. So I became interested. Some people that I knew and had grown up with that were still here, Dr. Gleason, the Kappelmans, it made me want to get in and see if I could make a difference. I was urged at the time, they were looking for a new city manager, and I was urged to apply, and I did. And in 1994, February, I became the city manager. I felt that if I would give it 2 years, and if I couldn't make a difference and I couldn't get the support from the city commission, and more importantly, some concerned residents and my city staff, then I would find my way elsewhere. Well, those 2 years turned into 11 plus, and we developed a vision of what we wanted the city to look like in the future. And that vision involved completely restoring the downtown to make it a destination like it used to be. To do that, we had to essentially recreate ourselves. And from that point, we developed the plans to achieve that vision. One of the first obstacles that we had to deal with were getting the trail through town. There were several alternatives that were proposed to avoid the downtown, because of the railroad, and the other because of, I believe, unspoken, but the condition of the downtown area. But we said, there's no way you're going to bypass the downtown, and we will find a way to deal with the railroad. And first, I want to find a way to deal with the Edgewater Hotel. And so I made some bold proposals. The first one being, we'll buy the Edgewater and stabilize it, get the pigeons out, and hopefully at some point we'd find someone to restore it, because we didn't want to be running a restoration project on the hotel. Well, as luck would have it, another person was interested, came. We developed a contract with him with requirements for the restoration, and he began work and has made it an excellent bed and breakfast that I have enjoyed the last 5 days that I've been here. The next obstacle was, as I said, getting the trail through town. I was able to work with the railroad and Ben Biskin from Florida Central Railroad. We got an agreement developed that allowed the trail to come through and operate with a operating railroad next to it. But that was not our ultimate vision. The ultimate vision was to remove the railroad from the downtown without penalizing those customers that needed to be served by the railroad. We did not want to in any way interfere with Mr. Biskin's business or the business of those that were receiving his services. And so the first proposals had been, it would cost $2 million, and the tracks would have come through about where we're sitting now in this library. That was unacceptable because it would interfere with things that we had a vision for in this area. And so I was able to discover a way and a property owner that would cooperate with us in return for what the city could do for in the way of utilities for that property that would foster development of the property. About 1995 was when we first had the trail through with the railroad still operating. It took a year or two more before I could get the all the right parties. It was a very difficult negotiation to get those people on board. And around 98, we removed the tracks, and we kept a portion to deal with those businesses. But the tracks that we wanted to remove were now out of downtown. We kept one stretch of track to go to the Railroad Museum, and for a period after that, we had a couple of dinner cruise events on the railroad. But we wanted to build. We were a citrus town. We never wanted to abandon that legacy as we developed, and with the indispensable efforts of Kay Kappelman and others at the Heritage Foundation, we were able to create an interest with the residents and with others that helped us build that legacy and focus on our historic past, but that we were coming into the future. And so we were diligently working on the plans for the streetscape. We started having some charrettes for the design of it. Some of the questions that were asked at some of them, and I attended all of them and was intimately involved with developing the streetscape. They asked me what was my vision of downtown Winter Garden. I said, well, I would like to go downtown, spend over $100 for a nice dinner meal, and then go to a play afterwards in the Garden Theater. Well, I just did that this last Saturday, Sunday. We developed the plans. Jerry Schicone was very instrumental in the foundation work and contributed significantly to that wonderful clock tower that was going to be our signature. I call it the Schicone Tower, the Schicone clock. And we were able to, after the tracks were removed, we removed the fence that had been there to protect it. We started the streetscape in 2001 time frame, and we had the construction completed in 2002 and a dedication in I think November of that year, and we had it all completed by our centennial. We had started working on the centennial some 3 to 4 years prior and wanted that event to occur in downtown. And we had week-long celebration. We had Disney, the big Disney floats. It was quite interesting to see them maneuver those huge floats down the streets. And the beautiful part of it was people were starting to come back. We didn't have many restaurants yet. And we were still, some of the merchants were still struggling to decide what they wanted to have as a minimum maintenance standards, what we wanted to have as a merchants group, which did not really exist before that time. And but we felt strongly that they had to develop that. It should not be something that the city decreed unless it was a last resort. Well, they worked together. I think they got in at some time around 2005, 2006.